listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder. This is the podcast where we hear from musicians and artists about everything that goes on between making records and going on tour. This episode is brought to you by Beavertown, who are doing an independent venue week tour next week. There's a different band playing in every different city in Bristol, Manchester, Glasgow, Leeds, Birmingham, Liverpool and London. Got brilliant bands from Lice to Opus Kink, Prima Queen to Gurry is playing and more. So check out Beavertown's socials. Pick up your tickets to those gigs for the massively important independent venue week. On today's episode of 101 Part-Time Jobs, we have Stuart Braithwaite from the legendary Mogwai, who are releasing their 11th album this Friday called The Bad Fire. His autobiography, Spaceships Over Glasgow, is a really great story. I read it just before speaking with him. A lot of it was fresh in my mind. And the thing that I got from that book was an excitement, like a sort of teenage thrill of playing music. I think when I got into Mogwai, I thought, this is quite serious music from serious people. And the more I learn about Stuart Braithwaite and Mogwai, I think, they're a bunch of people trying to have a laugh. And that's a really invitational idea. Mogwai's 11th album, The Bad Fire, is coming out this Friday. They've got their euphoric wall of sound fuzz. If you see Mogwai live, then you know what that's like. If you're just getting into Mogwai, it's their 11th album, so there's loads to go back to and hear for the first time. That's a great feeling. So I hope you enjoy this chat with me and Stuart Braithwaite. I went to the Barrowland Ballroom in Glasgow to do this. I thought, look, if we're going to do this chat, let's do it good and proper. Me and Nick, our videographer, went up there, and to sit in the middle of the floor of a venue that was such a pivotal space for Stuart Braithwaite, first going there with his older sister, sneaking in, and then headlining there with Mogwai, it was the place to do it, I think. So here it is. If you enjoy this chat, make sure you click subscribe on Spotify or Apple, wherever you're listening to this. And if you're able to leave us 5 stars, that massively helps us. We're an independent music show. It's just 3 of us working on this, and we love doing it. We love having you along. Thank you. 101 part-time jobs. 101 Part-Time Jobs just reached 400 episodes, and we won 2 awards at the Independent Podcast Awards. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. The reason we've been able to keep going is because of sponsorship. We've been lucky enough to work with some brands who we believe in and we understand the message of, and we hope you do too. This episode is sponsored by DistroKid. If you're looking for a way to put out your music, if you have a friend, a niece, a nephew that doesn't quite know how to get their music up on Spotify or Apple, tell them to head to DistroKid, where you can be your own record label effectively. That was a dream 10 years ago. I wish I had that growing up. But for an affordable price, you can go on DistroKid. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off your running costs there for the first year. So if you've made a record and you're not quite sure what you wanted to do with it, you can head to DistroKid and release it yourself. distrokid.com/VIP/101pod for 30% off your first year. Right now, we'll get back to the episode. Being the kind of elder statesman in the room or on the festival bill.
Yeah.
Have you managed to sort of keep a youthful excitement and naivety?
100%. I mean, I still love it. I still absolutely love it. It does kind of seem a bit surreal sometimes, like when you'll see like there's a bunch of younger bands watching us, and I remember us being the young bands watching the established bands or whatever. So yeah. It's weird to get that into your head, because I guess your formative years are the ones that kind of make the biggest marks. I always kind of think of us as young kids coming up, and obviously we're not anymore. So it's weird but nice. That's the thing about music, it makes you feel kind of invincible, and part of that invincibility is feeling young, wanting to know more. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. Music's fun. You're doing something fun. You're doing something kind of silly. Mm-hmm. You're kind of hanging out with your friends, whatever, traveling about, doing daft stuff. Yeah, it's great. I feel immensely lucky to still be able to do it. I suppose one of the things with doing it for a long time maybe is
is keeping that excitement and keeping like reconciling that idea that you know, some things do get boring, some things can get boring if you're doing them in a certain way.
Yeah.
So what do you think that you and the band has done to be able to keep it exciting?
I mean, I feel very grateful for it. So, and I think that's not really answered the question. I think the answer to the question is to do it with people you like, you know. I still have a lot of fun with the boys, with all the people we work with the bands on the label. Just yeah, it's good fun. If I kind of ever found myself in a position where I wasn't enjoying it, or like I was having to, because there are some bands that don't get on. I mean, it's kind of, I genuinely, I don't know, unless you're like in whatever name random stadium band level, it's not worth it, you know. Like, no one's getting super rich, you know. You may as well, you're doing it because you want to have fun, you want to have a good time, you want to change the world with your music. I know that sounds kind of slightly grandiose, but you want to make a difference, and you don't want to be miserable. People don't live forever. You want to have a good time while you're here.
Yeah. It's, for example, calling the record label Rock Action.
Yeah. You
know, name of one of the earlier records, third album, right? It's like, okay, you know who you were at that time. And so even calling the name of the record label that, there's always going to be something rooted or founded in where you were, like spiritually, and like, you know, the people that you were then.
Yeah.
So that lives on.
Yeah. I mean, the label's named after Scott Ashton, was the drummer in the Stooges. His nickname was Rock Action. And yeah, just their music over the years has made me unbelievably happy. It's changed my life, and just, I don't think I would be sitting here today if I hadn't heard the Stooges when I was a teenager. So even just doing one little thing that maybe some kid or someone at one point will be like, why is Mogwai's record label called that? And then they Google it and they find out and they're like, oh, the Stooges, I've never checked them out. I just like there to be, something. Music's a path, isn't it? You kind of, you find this out and then you find that out. And a lot of the bands I was into as a teenager, the contemporary bands I was into, like Primal Scream and Spaceman 3, were very open about their influences, and that's how I found out about a lot of older psychedelic music, like the 13th Floor Elevators or Suicide or the Stooges or all this kind of stuff. So you want to educate sounds a bit pompous, but you want to bring the music that you love to other people, and whether that's by the music you play or talking about it, I think it's really important, because that's the thing. One song or one story or one film, that can change your life, you know. And I love that. And I also keep that in mind when we were playing. Like, we did this one tour, and actually was a great fun tour. I'm not gonna complain about it. We were opening for the Manic Street Preachers, but they treated us really well. They're lovely people. But at the time, they were such a big chart band. I think they were number one. That their fans weren't really that interested in the support band, and our music was probably pretty different compared to the bands those people had seen. So like we kind of got like a bit of shit during that tour, like people chucking stuff or whatever, and we didn't care that much. But in my mind at the time, I was always like, that was fun. We were treated well, but what was the point of that? But I've met so many people over the years that's when they saw us. That's when they became aware of our music, and they were in provincial towns as well. They weren't all in. It wasn't like Manchester, London, Glasgow.
Towns.
Yeah, it was like seaside towns. So like, a lot of those people probably went just because there was a band playing, and it was a band they'd heard of or whatever. I'm not belittling the Manics, but hearing people years and years later say that really hearing our music was such a big thing for them, it always sticks in my head that like, if you're playing some show somewhere and maybe it's not, you're not headlining here, you're not headlining the Barrowlands, it's not some gig that you're counting down the days to, it kind of feels maybe not quite as big a deal, but you never know, like, it's always a big deal to someone, you know. You've always got to give your best, do the very best you can, you know.
101 part-time jobs, 101 part-time jobs.
coming here, the Barrowland Ballroom, the Barrowlands, you had some foundational moments here in your life, coming to see Jesus and Mary Chain, Primal Scream, eventually playing here, headlining with Mogwai. When you walk into a place like this, can you feel, sounds a bit of a wanky question, but there is energy in places, right?
Oh, 100%.
Do you feel the energy when you're walking here?
Yeah. I get a kind of tingling up my neck. This is one of the most special places for me on the planet. It's actually funny, I made a mistake in my book. I made a lot of mistakes, but one mistake I made is I talk about the Mary Chain was the first gig I ever went to here, and I actually got a list of every gig, and it actually was the Cramps.
Great.
And I saw a poster for it on the way up.
Yeah, awesome. So, seeing the Cramps here, I mean, I just imagine
unbelievable.
When you're a teenager, you got your fake ID.
A little teenager. I was a small kid.
You're lucky enough to have an older sister.
Yeah. I sneaked in, dressed up like a girl. So, it was amazing. And it was kind of dangerous back then as well. Gigs weren't they weren't sponsored by mobile phone companies and all this kind of stuff. Like, everything's a bit more sanitized now. But back then it was kind of rough. It was kind of edgy. And
it's the first time you're experiencing something like that.
Yeah, so I grew up in the countryside. I was kind of not a city person at all. So it was pretty mind blowing in a lot of ways.
Do you think there's something that there was a seed planted then that was like, okay, this is it?
I think when I first got into music, and when I first saw the first band I saw was The Cure. It wasn't in here. It was at a big kind of exhibition centre. But when I first saw live music, I don't know if I knew I wanted to be a musician, even though I was probably learning to play a little bit, but I definitely knew it was the kind of world that I wanted to be part of, whether that's just as a big fan or as I ended up a fan and someone who plays music too.
And it's a big difference to someone that age now getting into music and trying to play music, because universal credit's a lot harder to do. I mean, speaking for myself, universal credit was really... Well, it was great for how much I read, but I couldn't go away, and I got my rent covered, but you'd go in and they'd really make sure you got a job, even if you hated it.
Yeah.
Which is a bit different to how it was back then.
Yeah. You could sign on, and that kind of was really great for kind of music in the 80s and 90s, probably 70s as well, but it's obviously before my time. But yeah, you could sign on and get your rent paid and stuff, and then I think it's changed. It's funny that, because that's never been the case in America. Bands have always had jobs in America, but here people could do it, and so many great bands got good through that, and I'm sure writers, and I'm sure artists, and there's this idea that people think people want to sit about and do nothing. People don't want to sit about and do nothing. No one wants to sit about and do nothing, Like, people want to do things, but it's hard to do the things you want if they force you to get a crappy job or whatever. And what's the new one they're going to do? Give, like, fat people injections or something? It's like...
Really?
Yeah, did you not read about that? Yeah. Our wonderful new government. It's insane.
In the UK?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, but... Yeah, people don't... There's this idea, and I think it's really propagated by the tabloid press, isn't it, that people are lazy? It's a kind of thing that rich people who probably are lazy think. They're like, oh, people don't have money, they're lazy, and they've no idea what people's day-to-day lives are like. The older I get, I believe less and less in the concept of genius. I think a lot of the people that we think of as geniuses are just people who worked their arse off and really kind of focused in on one thing and kind of made it their thing. But it's just because they worked hard,
Yeah.
I mean, Jimi Hendrix was amazing. Jimi Hendrix practiced all the time,
What do you think about luck?
I think luck's a big factor. Yeah, and I think luck, and I think privilege. I definitely don't forget the fact that I'm a straight white guy, and that most people my age who've done well in the music industry are straight white guys, and that's changing for the better. But yeah, I think luck and privilege are definitely factors. But look, you're right, luck is a factor. You may bump into someone, but you also may be the kind of person that gets to go to certain places to beat people.
Yeah.
And that's where class becomes an issue, where like all your friends went to university, so you meet other friends of friends who are got great jobs because they all went to university, you know, because they grew up in a house full of books, you know, and a lot of people don't grow up in a house full of books, and it doesn't mean they're not capable or smart or anything. They just have to find a lot of shit out for themselves that I didn't. You know, I mean, I did go and find some things out for myself, but very lucky in a lot of other ways.
I think confidence is a big part of it. Speaking to a friend who, we went to different schools, and his school was the kind of place where you'd have to keep your head down,
right?
Where it's easier to keep your head down, to get along with it without getting battered because you got a mohawk when you're 16 and you're going to the local punk shows. In my school, it wasn't so much a problem. Yeah, and it's interesting how I don't mind walking into a room and introducing myself. Whereas he found it a lot harder. Yeah, it's
personality too. I mean, he might just be a shy person.
But we kind of learned that off each other. You know, he learned that off me, and I would learn particular things off him.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Confidence is such a big thing. And if you go to a really rough school and you're scared of getting your head kicked in because you like punk music or weird music or dress different or whatever, you're going to be less confident, you know? And that probably is a class thing as well, and just a circumstances. And it's one thing that bothers me a lot about the music industry, because when I think about the bands we grew up with, but also the bands I grew up listening to, a lot of them were working class, you know, like Joy Division, the Mary Chain, the Happy Mondays, the Stone Roses, Wire, you know, they're just regular. Like, probably these days a lot of those people wouldn't have as much time to make music because they would have to be doing something else. Yeah. You know? So it's you've got to try and fight these battles. Otherwise you just end up with boring posh people. Not some posh people haven't done some cool stuff, but you need a variety. You need all sorts of people. I saw an advert for a very big multinational company that you may have mentioned working for. Someone had their song in it, and we may not have got it anyway, but I remember a year or so ago someone was like, hey, we might put your song forward for this, and we were like, there's no way we're not going to do that. Like, we couldn't have our song associated with that company. I don't give a shit. When this other person who's super well thought of had done it, and it's like, no, the concept of selling out is gone. Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't know what you would have to do. Like, I don't know, like go for dinner with Donald Trump or something before anyone's going to actually think anything bad about you. I think
this is the way that I see it, and I think lots of people I know see it is, okay, you can get paid for having your song on an advert, or good on you, because that means you can pay your rent for 6 months or whatever it might be. You get to continue doing your craft. Yeah, I mean, we've had songs and adverts. I'm not even being totally puritanical about it. I guess we just have maybe a line. Maybe the line doesn't even exist anymore. You see it in skateboarding. I don't know how much skateboarding you watch now, but if someone was wearing a Monster Energy cap 10 years ago,
you think it was really whack. Yeah. And now I think, it's this kid who's grown up in a single parent family. Yeah, and wearing that daft hats, probably bought his mum and dad a house. Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I guess it's probably as much acceptance of kind of corporate money as an acceptance that, you know what, everyone's got to eat. You know. And we were just talking to the cabbie on the way here. We were saying, talking about the markets, because we're in the Barrows. This is where market day happens, or market weekend happens. Yeah. And you can buy stuff cheaper on Amazon. And that is a really difficult pill to swallow, because it's, you know, everyone's finding it difficult now. Most people are finding it difficult to pay for regular things that everyone should have by right. And where do you go locally to buy it, or do you go online to buy it? And it's cheaper online. I find that, actually, going back to skating, I've got a friend with a skate shop, and he says, like most kids will just go online and find the cheapest place. They don't have, and this is kind of where I'm going back to, like and even like independent, it goes into music too, because independent versus major labels, it's like, if you buy from your local skate shop because you want them to be there, they're part of the community, they're part of they'll talk to you about what size deck to get or what wheels to get.
Place to hang out. After school.
And I think we're kind of losing a bit of that, you know. And again, I mean, I love this place. You said you met the family, the guy from the family that owns it. They're just like an old family. They've had it forever.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't cost a crazy amount of money to hire this place.
He answered the phone when I called the number.
Yeah, if you're putting a show on here, I think they take a flat fee for selling your t-shirts. They're not taking 20-25% like the big corporate places are. And I think that this is a conversation that is becoming more widespread because of the Ticketmaster scandals. People are realizing that like corporations are robbing us blind, and they're really damaging the music industry. They're really damaging the grassroots. They're damaging the indie sector in a way that we're only really starting to feel. But when people, like, I go to big shows. Thankfully, I can go to a lot of shows, but like in the last year, I've went to see like Madonna and Taylor Swift. I've been to these really big shows. But if you're a teenager, or if you're working in a supermarket, or just to have a regular job, if you go to those shows, you can't afford to go to other shows. You know, the tickets were like, I can't remember, a couple £100, 300 quid or something.
Well, people were flying over from America to here to see a Taylor Swift concert
because they thought it was cheap.
It's cheaper, including the flights.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. And I'm not even having a go at her. Like, she's probably been so removed from all of this stuff for so long that the difference between £100 and £1,000 makes no difference. It's like us dropping change at the ground. I mean, I'm not even having a go at her, but the people pulling the strings do know. They do know. And like Oasis as well, like what they're doing is they're lessening the chance of a new Oasis or a new Taylor Swift. And you even see it at festival bills. I mean, most festival bills are bands that were headlining festivals, are bands that were going before we started.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's because there was a pathway that is less and less there now. And it goes back to the class thing, you know, like I'm sure, and why there's less bands. People, I think it was the dude from, is it Richard Osman, the author, TV show guy, and he was like talking about how there's hardly any bands, and it's bloody obvious why there's no bands. You can't afford to take 4 or 5 people on tour. Record labels don't have the money to send 4 or 5 people around to go and do interviews. They're going to sign the one person. And if you're into music, you're probably thinking as well, like, what chance have I got? What chance have I got with my 3 mates? Or what chance have I got with just me? And yeah, it's shifted. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's just the way it's going. But as someone who's had a lot of fun playing in bands, I think it kind of is a bit of a sad thing.
Speaking of which, David Keenan wrote that book, Memorial. This is Memorial Device. It opened my eyes to this fictional / non-fictional scene in Airdrie. I'm like, fuck, yes, this is it. Yeah. This is the spirit that I want to be around. Yeah,
you're right. Actually, I think the Memorial Device book really captures that. It captures that kind of underground punk rock spirit. Very of its time, but people still feel that way. People still feel that way. I don't want to be like, even though I'm moaning about a load of stuff, I don't want people to think, oh, the old days were so great. People still feel that way. Yeah. You go to shows, people go nuts. People are going crazy for music. They'll love it. Like young bands will go in mad tours and sleep on floors, and all this stuff's still happening. But yeah, the Memorial Device book's pretty special.
It's really good. Have you seen the did you go to see the theatre of it?
Yeah, I saw it at the Tron Theatre here, and it was brilliant. It was really great. And like David's an old friend of mine as well. Like David, he had a night at the 13th Note called Cool Ports, which is named after a Pastels song, and that was the first place that I heard like the Dirty Three and La Bradford and Noy and a load of music that was really foundational for me. So I met my wife through his wife as well.
Okay.
So at Supersonic Festival. So yeah, I've kind of got a lot of connections.
This new record, The Bad Fire, What's been exciting you about it? What kind of particular moments, whether it was writing or recording, or where you're at, today with it, when you're waking up today, you're like, I can't wait for that bit to get out.
I'm excited for people to hear it. There's a lot of music on it that I'm excited for people to hear. It wasn't the easiest record to make, but Barry from the band's had a hard time. His little girl's been really ill, so he wasn't traveling with us, and it was harder to get together to write. So it was tough, but yeah, when we got in and started making noise, it kind of clicked into place, and yeah, I'm excited about it.
And you got your HQ, your studio. Did you practice it there?
Yeah, we rehearsed in our place. We actually didn't record in our place. We recorded at Chemical Underground Studio just because it's got a bigger live room. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. John Congleton came over.
Yeah,
recorded it with us. He was a lot of fun. Really nice guy.
So he's good at that heavy, soft stuff.
He is, and he's also he doesn't mess about. Like, we'd most of the album recorded in 5 days. Like, we had 2 weeks, and then kind of spent the last week and a half just kind of trying things, because we just smashed that out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really good.
Can I ask? You don't have to say, but roughly how much do you reckon it cost you to record this record? Without giving away John's fees or studio fees, just ballpark.
Ballpark, yeah, I'll be honest, I think it was about 60 grand.
Yeah, which is a lot cheaper than how records used to be made.
Yeah. Yes, but you can also make a record a lot cheaper than that.
Did you have to decide at one point? Did you think, okay, at what kind of ballpark figure are we going to spend on this? Because you're running your own label. I know someone.
Yeah, I guess we based on how the last one did. And
number one.
Yeah, the last one did pretty well. So I think maybe the last one didn't cost quite as much because there was less travel involved because of the pandemic. But yeah, I think you kind of got to cut your cloth accordingly. I mean, I know at certain points in the past with the band, we've had to make cheaper records because the labels we were on were not going to give us the budget of the one before. So it's kind of, but we've always kind of prioritized how the record is over any kind of. Yeah, we've never been the most capitalist about our plans.
Mm-hmm. And writing songs that make you feel good.
Yeah, we never think about anything like that. Yeah.
You're like, this is us.
Yeah, we just smash it out and see what happens.
And that's quite rare. I mean, there's a bit in your book, Spaceships Over Glasgow, where you're on tour with The Cure, and Robert Smith says, you should write a pop song, write something with a hook.
Yeah. I think we kind of took that on board. But, I mean, yeah, Robert, you can't exactly argue with Robert's kind of career choices. Done amazingly well. So, yeah, I'm sure he had a point. Funny, though, like our old A&R man, John Niven, who's a writer now, I remember I sent him a rough thing of a book, and he's like, oh, yeah, you're all fine if Robert Smith tells you to write a song with a hook. If I told you that, you'd have kicked my cunt in. I was like, yeah, well, let's let Robert Smith over you, John, sorry.
You'll never guess what happened today at work. On my third strike, my boss is such a turd, such a jerk. It's not that deep, he drives a Jeep. I was only trying to have a laugh. There it goes again. It's another work gaff.
I love that story where you're going to the Dole office and you managed to drop a 250 quid check from the publishing or from the record label in your early days.
Distributor.
I mean, 250 quid back then is a nice amount of time.
It was the only money we'd ever made from any music, and I dropped it. Which meant also that they stopped my Dole money and I had to move back in with my parents.
What other kind of mishaps, kind of missteps have happened along the way? I mean, that's kind of a big question spanning over a big period of time. But, when you think about some real gaffes that you've done, that you've kind of made during the band or...
I lost my passport when I was on acid once. Not me, but one of the band went to the wrong hotel. That always amuses me. Like, I guess it was a Marriott, but they went to a different Marriott and tried to get into the wrong room.
Spinal Tap is real.
Spinal Tap is very real. Yeah, I once tried to go for a pee in the middle of the night and lock myself out of my hotel room naked. I've done that once or twice. I mean, it's just life, isn't it? I mean, I guess the thing about being a band is you end up in ridiculous situations, maybe more than you do in regular everyday life, because you're always in a different place, and especially when you're younger, you tend to be drunk all the time or whatever. But yeah, you find a way.
And Glasgow's your home.
Yeah, I love you. Yeah.
And this is you feel like spiritually, like in the air. You're like, this is the place where I belong.
Yeah, I like it a lot here. The weather's terrible, but there's a good music community, and it's a lot less expensive than a lot of other cities. So yeah, there's a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, nice. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
So there was Stuart from Mogwai here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Mogwai's new album, The Bad Fire, is out this Friday. Thank you for listening to the show. If you've got any questions, if you want to touch base, email me at giles@mightymoonmedia.com. We've got loads of things going on here, loads of exciting things that we're looking forward to. And one of those things is physical that should be arriving in the post anytime soon. So I'll be chatting more and more about that. Coming up this week, we've got an episode with Prima Queen and Opus Kink celebrating Independent Venue Week along with Beavertown. And next week, we'll have episodes from actual shows on the Independent Venue tour that Beavertown's doing, where we'll be hearing from Bristol, Lice, Manchester, Opus Kink, and Thursday, Leeds with Gurriers. So come back then. Cheers.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.